This is not even beef tallow, it's mutton tallow. And it's not even mutton tallow, it's a modified funky mutton tallow oil thing.
I feel like we're literally reaching into the bottomless pit and be like, there's something, let's share it.
Give us some sign.
Welcome back to the Chemist Confessions podcast. I'm Gloria.
And I'm Victoria.
And this is a human conversation on all the skincare science we talk about on the daily. And today is an episode near and dear to my heart, sort of, in a weird way. It is not what you expect. It is all about beef tallow.
Probably one of the most popular requests we've gotten this year. And not gonna lie, I think Gloria and I, this has been in the queue and we keep being like, and then finally, okay, now we're doing it. We're doing it, guys.
If you've been following us for some time, you guys will know that sometimes we don't love taking on subjects that we just know there's not a bunch of science for us to dive into. But at the same time, I feel like you guys actually appreciate these episodes when we're just reaching deep and have to go into like a circuitous science lesson just to figure out and extrapolate any meaningful information at all.
Yeah, and I think that's a bit of a episode reveal. But hopefully you will find it at least entertaining. And I think what Gloria and I were discussing was that this is a perfect example of a influence that comes from outside the industry and how it can quickly integrate into our skincare realm. The path, kind of the level of data behind it, and it really feels like it's coming from different perspectives from the outside arena. And so if you ever wonder like, oh, this food that I'm eating, suddenly it's in skincare, like will be a great example of why that happens.
We're going to dive right into just what is beef tallow. In a nutshell, it is basically leftover fat trimmings and processed from the meat industry. And you might think that's a kind of a weird origin story to how it ends up in skincare. But one of the biggest claims that you'll hear is that it's similar to our very own skin lipid.
So interesting. Skin lipids, how? What composition? The general characterization of the material? Like, what are we talking here?
That is a great question. So since we just did a whole series on ceramides and whatnot, I'm just going to come out the gate and say not the composition. It's not because it has your cholesterol fatty acid and ceramides that not similar in that sense. So then I was pretty curious. So I went down rabbit hole looking at the characterization of beef tallow compared to, say, human sebum even. I am just gonna say that I kind of don't understand where this claim came from. So to start, I looked at the melting point. Beef tallow has a melting point of between about 35 degrees Celsius to 50 degrees Celsius. Seems like a wide range, but makes sense if you think about it. It's extracted from meat, and every batch you're gonna get is gonna have a little bit of a difference unless it's hyper processed. And then I kind of looked up the melting point of sebum. Human sebum has a onset melting point of 32.9 degrees Celsius and peaks at 42 degrees Celsius. I'm like, okay, it's kind of in that range. Cool. And in case anyone's wondering, I'm guessing no one's wondering, but hamster body sebum has a melting point of 33.1 degrees Celsius. It's from the same study. I'm going to put the chart up for those who's curious.
I mean, I think the worst part is that there's hamster body sebum and ear sebum. So I think that part freaks me out more than anything.
Yeah, so again, these like things derived from nature, whether it's from animals or like alive things like humans or plant things, they are all going to exist on a spectrum. And for your reference, common ingredients in skincare also have melting points kind of in that range. You have things like shea butter that melts around 32 to 38 degrees Celsius. Cocoa butter is also in that range. Mango butter is a little higher, 30 pushing into 40s. And then you have petrolatum at 40 to 60. Again, really wide range, but of course it really depends on the specific batch and how it's processed. And then beeswax, something like beeswax is a lot harder, and melts at greater than 60 degrees Celsius.
I have to say, like, I know people are listening to this and they're like, scintillating, Gloria, like
I
numbers that I
know, I
really want
know,
to remember.
I
But
know.
just so you know, like this stuff becomes important for us because you want to think about products on your skin and your skin temperature. And like the melting aspect of this really will dictate how a texture spreads and finishes and, the whole like melting vibe, so these numbers might not, they sound very boring to you, but just a little fun fact of like stuff that we will pay attention to and how it can really, I guess, change or really impart a specific texture.
Yep. So then I went deeper into this rabbit hole because I was like, okay, so I don't understand why it's similar to skin lipid, but what about the composition? What gives it that maybe magic sauce? So then I found this paper that goes into a very important concept, which is when it comes to natural stuff, we're not just talking about
Mm,
animal derived products. This applies to planty stuff as well, is how it's extracted matters. Because in this paper, they characterize beef tallow derived in a gazillion different ways.
we'll put up the chart that Gloria
Hmm.
found for you guys to see in different ways. There's 6 specific extraction methods. You don't actually need to pay attention to extraction methods in your products, but just know that the method can really dictate what components you're being able to pull out. Some methods are very energy intensive, but you get better purity or you're able to
Hmm.
really hone in on the good molecule. So I think this table is like a really great explanation of why you'll hear things like cold press or things like that. It's why they kind of market it just, and you can get really different materials.
Yeah. And another aspect of that as well is the material itself also matters because this paper also divvied up based on the source. They actually
Mm.
divided up the fat from by HF, which stands for hard fat, and SF, which stands for soft fat, which again, I didn't know you can request different types of fat from beef, but it does make
Yeah.
sense that, there are different grades and different aspects of the fat to begin with. For those of you curious, the 3 extraction methods you're looking here, I find this one a little interesting because they have double boiling, low temperature process, which all makes sense. And then they have MW and it's referred to as MW throughout the paper. So I was like, what is MW? It's microwaving. They microwave the fat. So you're yeah, I was like, medium molecular weight, like, what does that mean? And thinking about those really high-tech machinery that might be involved, it's
Uh,
microwave.
it's so funny. I was just about to be like, this is a very nerdy technical breakdown, but then like methodology wise, oh, suddenly kind of crude. Like I don't know what to think.
Yeah, so, again, we're gonna have this chart up, so for those of you curious, you can kind of see how some characteristics can come in a range, some composition can come in a range, some are tighter than others. And honestly, this whole, like, what is beef tallow section, I didn't mean for it to turn into this major character like fats and oils characterization lesson, but at the same time, I think it's important to highlight that that is a nature of fats and oils. People or like products make really sweeping generalized statements like it is good for skin because it's like skin. But the reality is fats, oils, butters, these things from nature, they are compositionally complicated, which means it's hard to define it with just one aspect, right?
Yeah, and the other thought I had was like every time I hear about raw
Mm,
butters and like waxes, like it really irks me because like there's a lot of work that's done to characterize, but the raw landscape can really make it feel so crude. The idea of like farm to table as natural as you can get. And like that is such an unrefined process and
mhm.
QA/QC of these materials. So yeah, hopefully that gives you some insight that it's not as simplified of like of a production as you may think.
Yeah, 100%. So I'm gonna blitz. I'm gonna put a table up on the screen. I pulled a couple of these general beef tallow characteristic values and compared it to some of the common ingredients you might come across in skincare.
Mhm.
First up, I already briefly touched on melting point. Another number that people always look at is saponification value. Generally speaking, this kind of gives you an idea of the chain of the molecular size of these components within the fat or butter. Beef tallow clocks in around 190. This is very close to shea butter's range of 170 to 190. For context, beeswax is in the 80s to 100. this number, lower the number, bigger the size. And makes a lot of sense for beeswax, which is harder, more crystalline, and much more rigid. And then the third value that I think is worth looking at is the iodine value. Iodine value is a measurement that can tell you how saturated the fat molecules are in a substance. Beef tallow clocks in at a range of 40 to 50. And then again, for reference, shea butter is also in a similar range, going between about 50 to 70, while beeswax is very low at 3 to 10. The higher it is, the more unsaturated fat is. The lower this number, the more saturated product is.
So just to reiterate, this is the same saturated, unsaturated fats we're talking about when we read like nutrition labels, right?
Yes, that's exactly it. Saturated fats tend to be straighter. There's less double bonds. There's less kinks. So they tend to be harder, more rigid, so on and so forth.
Yeah, and I think one of the things to point out here is that we only give you a couple characterization aspects that are looked at. There's no like one that like indicates something great or bad. It's like they look at multiple metrics to kind of get a sense of, like Gloria mentioned, like shelf life, composition, how a material is going to handle different temperatures. All of these give it each like unique properties and allows us to kind of compare these materials. So that's all to say, don't try to hone in on like one of these things if you are somehow find yourself in the realm of butters and waxes. I don't know how you end up here, but yeah.
I was digging deep in terms of this section, but I do think it's pretty interesting. Like once you pull all the characterizations, the picture that we just painted is that it's a pretty melty butter that actually falls in a very similar behavioral bucket as shea butter, just based on these measured values. So if you need a reference to some more plant-based ingredients, similar to shea.
I was just gonna say that, like, well, we have Shea. Here. Okay, I'm jumping ahead. Sorry.
Oh, you have so little faith. Of course, that's not all.
Okay, my bad.
We still have a whole half an episode to go through.
Okay, you're right. We've got data. We've got testing.
So after all the characterization, I'm like, okay, wonderful. Again, I don't think this fully addresses the question of how did it end up in skincare. So I started looking up papers on beef tallow applications, hoping that would lead me straight to skincare. But basically, actually led me to beef tallow as a stock material for making biodiesel.
I'm sorry, what? Wait,
yes.
First of all, how did that even become how did someone get this idea? Did they just have this large sum of beef tallow and they were like, methinks I need to try to do something with this? Okay.
Yeah, basically, I feel like that's exactly what happened. Was so I came across like pages of information on Google Scholar with things like biodiesel for animal fat, studies on transesterification of beef tallow. It's actually been looked at for the past 10-15 years, and I'm pretty sure it's just like a kind of like corn as the root source of ethanol fuel and whatnot. It's a waste product, and then after a while they're like, there's only so much biodiesel to be made from beef tallow, we should promote it in skincare. Is now my working theory.
That's exactly my thought, is like, man, could it be more like a bounced around material that no one knows what to do, but they try to capitalize on because, I mean, it's a byproduct that no one wants. I just, it's the ugly duckling child that nobody knows what to do with.
Yep. So just a little fun blip for you guys. We're going to take a break now. And when we come back, we're going to look at actual testing of using beef tallow on skin. Okay, so we just mentioned how beef tallow can be extracted from different methods. Here's a chemist nerd fact that we want you to know about the shea butter we use in our Bon Voyage. There are hundreds of ways shea butter has been manipulated, rightfully so because its texture and skin-friendly melting point, but manipulating it even further and do fancy, smart chemist things to it, and it can actually be really beneficial for skin.
In our Bon Voyage, we use 1.5% NG Shea unsaponifiables. This is a specific shea active, so this is not your average shea butter, and it comes from the matrixyl ingredient suppliers Sederma. They've tested this shea for lips and found that it actually can help reduce dry, flaky lips in just 48 hours, which definitely got our attention. So now you know that even shea butter can get really fancy, and it's not just a crushed nut butter.
Let's talk about beef tallow and skincare. But before we talk about the clinical data and or maybe the lack thereof, we have to address this claim, which is the second claim you will always hear about beef tallow is how it is quote unquote super nutrient rich. It is so nourishing because it is rich. It has high levels of vitamins A, D, E, K, and the list goes on.
Every letter under the sun.
Yes, basically. So we're not going to talk about every single one of those letters. We're just going to use good old vitamin E as an example of how do we feel about this claim. And just like our first segment, we're going to reference some other common ingredients found in skincare as reference. First up, we have rose oil that's super common in skincare. Rosehip oil is not actually known for its vitamin E content. It's usually more well known for its higher vitamin A or keratin content, but we're using it as a lower bound reference. I found this paper that actually measured different rose species. I think Rosa canina seed oil is pretty much the most common forms of rosehip oil you will see in skincare, so we're just going to use that number. It has a combined total tocopherol concentration of roughly around 10 micrograms per gram, and we're going to just convert that to milligrams because everything else is in milligrams. So just keep this number in mind. Rosehip seed oil has about 0.1 milligrams per gram worth of vitamin E. And then we're going to use a higher upper bound for reference, which is argan oil. Argan oil has one of the highest, definitely the higher end of vitamin E content in terms of skincare oils. It has about a total tocopherol concentration of 1,000 milligrams per kilograms. We're going to, again, convert that to milligrams per gram. So roughly about exactly 1 milligram of vitamin E per gram of oil.
If you're wondering what milligram to gram, what all that means, you're looking at for rosehip, about a 0.001% concentration of vitamin E, whereas for argan oil, you're looking at a 0.01% concentration of vitamin E. Typically in skincare, tocopherol is commonly used, and the general concentration is actually going to be around another 10x, so 0.1%. And remember, this is if you use these oils neat, nothing else. So hopefully that gives you guys a spectrum of general vitamin composition and concentrations in some of these plant materials. Gloria loves to hate on these claims, but hopefully you can see it is for a valid reason.
When I go on one of these rants with Victoria, I'm always like, these are the claims that's made by people bad at math. What does it mean, rich in blank? We need context. Context matters. So anyway, and now for the beef tallow reference.
Oh God, I'm like terrified. I'm already scared.
So I pulled this table from the University of Rochester. There are other sources that's all honestly pretty similar to this one. Sources include USDA and other more nutrition label type sources. But in in this chart, you will see that beef tallow has no measurable vitamin A of any form, vitamin A, retinol, keratin, beta carotene, alpha carotene, etc. And it has a vitamin E concentration of 0.35. The unit here is milligrams. So we're talking about 0.35 milligrams of vitamin E per tablespoon of beef tallow. I did the calculation. That's about 14 grams of beef tallow, which means that every gram of beef tallow, you are expected to get 0.03 milligrams of vitamin E.
So that's 0.0003% concentration of vitamin E.
Yeah, that's significantly lower than argan oil at 1 whole milligram per gram, and lower than even our not super awesome source of vitamin E, rosehip seed oil. So, context, guys.
So, not about the vitamins. We're not about that.
Yeah, and just so you guys, I dug really deep to give beef tallow a second chance. I actually found a seller of beef tallow for skincare at this website called buffalogalgrassfed.com. They, I guess, got a lot of questions about these claims, so they actually did a composition study on their company's beef tallow. And I should mention that this is usually time point where we share their data. But on the blog that I found, it's a lot of the data they share is a little trimmed, and I can't see the full table, so I find it a little hard to present it correctly. But I will just read word for word their conclusion. They wrote, contrary to popular claims, our results indicate that even the highest quality tallow, which we consider therapeutic grade, is not as vitamin rich as commonly believed.
Well, at least they're honest.
Yeah, I give them full credit. And of course, they are still big believers in tallow skin benefits. They're just saying that vitamin isn't the reason why it's good for skin. And I find it to be a very refreshingly honest take on this.
So if a brand tells you it's not very vitamin rich, maybe it's not very vitamin rich.
Yes. So far we have debunked that it's very similar to your skin lipid. We have debunked that it is nutrient rich. Forget all that. Let's talk about, is there any data on actual topical skin benefits?
All right. So let's start with a review paper.
I love those.
And I think the best way is to actually just share a longer but hopefully very informative quote that will probably give you a general sense of the landscape. So this paper, they actually write, tallow was found to offer hydrating and moisturizing properties. However, other compounds that were studied in comparative studies, such as pumpkin seed oil and linoleic acid, were found to offer superior hydrating and moisturizing benefits than tallow. They also mentioned the third objective was to determine the therapeutic properties of topical tallow. Research indicated that tallow may be beneficial in helping with skin conditions such as dermatitis, psoriasis, dry skin, and wounds. However, more research needs to be conducted with larger sample sizes to determine the longitudinal effects. Did not know what that meant, but
Oh, the longitudinal.
but anyways, the longitudinal, I'm assuming long-term effects of tallow on a variety of skin types and skin disorders. Something that was also kind of interesting, they mentioned the fourth objective was to analyze the side effects of tallow. This objective, I feel invested in the side effects part. As a person with acne, the thought of beef tallow putting it on my skin scares me a little. But they write, this objective resulted in the largest number of discrepancies between papers. Some papers argue that tallow resulted in no irritation to the skin and eyes. Others reported that it causes severe irritation. And some only classified either the skin or eyes as having a reaction. The results of these papers showed a significant limitation in understanding any potential adverse side effects of tallow. So,
I have a question.
Yes, Gloria.
This all seems very new, and we have a lot more question and answer based on this quote. When was this study published? Is this recent? Do we have more data?
I'm so glad you asked this, Gloria. The paper was published, and I just don't want to get the year wrong, last year.
Okay, so odds of us having moved past this significantly is not good.
Yeah, so hopefully, I would say this is it's a word cloud of uncertainty. And we'll also explain why as we go through their compilation of testing that they've list in their review paper. We'll start with one that actually sounds kind of interesting because they note that they're actually going to compare tallow to pumpkin seed oil on their positive and negatives when applied topically. So that's great. We'll pull up the paper here for you to see. The title of this paper is called Physical Chemical Characterization and Evaluation of Emulsions Containing Chemically Modified Fats and Different Hydrocolloids.
What?
That's a lot of technical words just to say, looking at different lotions with varying concentrations of fats and oils. So,
Wait, I'm sorry. I almost blanked out a little bit there. So, is this paper focused on tallow or?
yes. So one would think that in this beef tallow review paper that lists this as part of their review and analysis, you would think that it mentions beef tallow, but this paper does not. In fact, it actually just looks at emulsions of various ratios that do include beef tallow, but does it actually look at any properties that involve skin and skin benefits? No, it is strictly like a very technically dense characterization of lotions, like the I would say chemical property, the physical properties of emulsions, nothing to do with actual skin.
I'm starting to feel the pain of the author of this review paper. They sound like they were digging deep for anything.
So the motif of this episode is digging deep. Gloria, in the beginning, as she was going through, explaining beef tallow, explaining why she had thrown that phrase around many times. She's digging deep. This is the epitome of really digging deep and reaching for anything, any sign of benefit or understanding of beef tallow for skin. But we keep going. So the same group, they actually have a follow-up study. Unfortunately, this follow-up study is going to feel a bit like a derivative of a beef tallow clinical, because it is they did do a hydration clinical.
But hydration clinical.
Hydration clinical. But unfortunately, this is about mutton tallow.
Oh, we cross species here.
We cross species, but even worse, they did some funky things to it where they basically esterified it using walnut oil. So this is gonna like drive people nuts, but basically they're doing a chemical reaction. So it's kind of like a morphed mutton tallow oil extract.
This is not only not testing using beef tallow. It is more, no. It's not even mutton tallow. It's more like mutton tallow weight. Is that
yes, correct. Correct. If this were to be an inky ingredient, there would be a ATE added at the end of the mutton tallow. Yeah.
I will take any study, any data. Yes. Point, hit me.
Yes, we are not choosing beggars. Slim pickings are here, so we're going to go through this study because it's actually a legitimate clinical. What they did was they have a group of 42 subjects. This is considered the younger group. I believe the age group is like 18 to like mid 30s. And then they actually have 36 subjects for an older group. So what they did was they did a corneometer study, basically a hydration study where they had two groups. So they had 42 subjects, considered the younger group for ages between 18 and 35. So, and then they had a second group with 36 subjects. This is the older group that includes an age range of 40 to 50 years of age. They did a clinical that basically wanted to test 6 different emulsion types. I don't even think type is the right word. It's like 6 emulsions made using different processes, slightly, maybe a slight formulation change.
But similar mutton tallow weight concentrations.
Yes, correct. So, again, we're really like getting granular here. But we'll put the results on the screen for everyone to take a look at. What you're seeing, the percentages and the graph is actually showing the change in hydration and degree of or increase essentially of hydration across different time points, where they measured at 5 minutes, 15, 30, 45, 60, 75, and 90. But ultimately, they're essentially suggesting, I believe, except for maybe emulsion 6, that the use of this modified mutton tallow does help with hydration levels.
Scintillating. I will say, yeah. If I were to be picky, obviously that initial application going up to 100% increase in hydration level makes sense. Having it gives you some instant occluding properties or something. It's moisturizing. There is one group in particular, emulsion 6 at the 90th minute mark went right back to baseline. Which is like 90 minutes is not that impressive of a timeline.
So my theory is that emulsion is unstable. I actually am like convinced that that's just a really shoddy emulsion, and that process should be like needs to go. So I don't know what happened there. In the older group, you don't see that return to zero necessarily. It does seem to be more helpful for older skin types, which does essentially check out in terms of seeing like a higher degree of improvement. But yeah, in some ways we are sharing data that's like, again, a huge reach, because again, this is not even beef tallow, it's mutton tallow, and it's not even mutton tallow, it's a modified funky mutton tallow oil thing.
I feel like we're literally reaching into the bottomless pit and be like, there's something, let's share it.
Give us some sign.
And this is straight from the review paper. We kind of referenced it and went out from there. And yeah, those guys were digging deep too.
That's it. That's all the testing that could be found
on
skin.
So
All right, it's the Animal Fun Fact Corner. Okay, today it is my turn, and I simply wanted to share a really fascinating study that I think it will affect everyone. So there has been a study recently that was published, and it is about mosquitoes' attraction to what kind of skin.
My skin. The conclusion is Gloria's skin. I don't know if it's statistically significant, but me.
Yeah. So we'll see. So what's interesting and what I really loved is, so they conducted this study and they described it as a slightly steamy pop-up laboratory inside 4 connected shipping containers at the Lowlands Festival, which is a music festival in the Netherlands.
Who came up with this study? That's so mean.
Yeah. It's like kind of awesome, and it's just like the environment is like just it's great. I love this. Totally wild. I'm sure the data is very not clean, but like yeah, it's kind of great. They included 465 participants, and what they wanted to understand was what attributes of these humans would affect mosquito attraction. And they had them essentially fill out a questionnaire on their hygiene, their diet, their festival, they call it festival related behavior, which includes things.
Related behavior. Is it like, are you having an orgy today? Are you drinking?
It writes, including alcohol uptake and shared sleeping arrangements. In detail, they write, mosquito attraction was measured using a custom designed setup where it's a transparent cage with perforations where female mosquitoes, a certain type of, a certain strain of female mosquitoes, was offered a choice between a sugar feeder or the participant's arm. And they just wanted to see which one would they prefer.
That's so nice. You're sweeter than sugar to a mosquito.
Yeah, actually. And mosquitoes could only smell, not actually bite the participant's arm. Attraction was quantified through video imaging, measuring arm landings relative to total landings. And mosquito attraction was correlated with questionnaires responses and their skin microbiota profiles collected from the forearm skin swabs. So in a way, it's like kind of crazy and creative, but kind of cool.
That's pretty intensive. I was going to say, that's a lot of characterization.
Yeah. And the cool thing
of
is
this episode, characterizing things.
They mentioned that mosquitoes showed a clear fondness for those who drink beer over those who abstain. They actually write this, over those who abstained from the liquid gold. They said attraction was also contagious. Participants that successfully lured a fellow human into their tent. They also mentioned that participants that, I guess, hooked up with a fellow human the previous night also proved to be more enticing to mosquitoes.
Ew. Wait. So if you exchange... Ew, I feel like the mosquito is like picking up on drama or something.
Yeah, and then they also said skipping the morning showering routine and using sunscreen reduced mosquito attraction. I was like,
Duly
okay,
noted.
sunscreen, They also, in terms of microbiota, they mentioned that if streptococci was more abundant on the skin, highly attractive individuals. So yeah, so those are a few conclusions that they were able to gather from this clinical study done at a Netherlands music festival that, yeah, of
whoever
over 400
proposed this
participants.
is a genius. And also like evil genius. Probably just wants to go to the music festival.
Yes.
It's like, how do I get budget for this? How do I go on public dime?
Yeah, I was thinking like disgruntled PhD students like in the general field that were like, you know what, that's it. Like, I need to get out of the labs. How am I going to do this on funding dime? Like,
that's great. I love it. I feel like the wording is pretty funny too. The one that's like it's like you attract a lot of mosquitoes and you attract an unsuspecting mate, and that person gets bitten by mosquitoes. It's like one of those weird random consequences of hooking up and no one thinks about.
Yeah, so if you need a reason to maybe not have a one-night stand, mosquito bites, I don't know.
That is a hilariously weird study. I love it.
Yeah. Hey, animal fun facts about mosquitoes.
I think we should maybe ring it back all in and draw some conclusions here. So
Mhm.
the key takeaways to sum up everything: beef tallow is an animal fat derived from, well, beef, and it has very similar physiological properties to shea butter. Topically, you will hear a lot of wild claims ranging from very similar to skin lipids, rich in nutrients, and that it's good for acneic skin, good for eczema, so on and so forth. Um, None of which have a ton of legs to stand on.
Yeah, and I think the other one that sometimes, or I feel like it was really popular, was actually in sunscreens. There was even a couple recent launches that that did include beef tallow, and if you're wondering how that happened, for us, it could be from the general DIY sunscreen movement, the whole clean beauty aspect, wanting more natural materials because of the fear of the general chemically sounding sunscreen filters and I would say solvents that are used. But yeah, again, like this just goes back to my general feelings of I believe shea butter, cocoa butter, our understanding of these materials is way, way more advanced than beef tallow.
Yeah, that is such a good point, and that's definitely one of my biggest feelings when we were doing the characterization of beef tallow behavior. Shea butter keeps coming up as a pretty close comparison in terms of these values and behaviors. And shea, as we were saying in the Bon Voyage segment, we did a lot of work in shea butter, looking at different types of it, different sources of it, different levels of refinement, and shea derived type products. So as chemists, we can tell you that is a butter source that's been sliced and diced and studied in every single format possible. So it's hard for us to look at that and the studies that's available in terms of beef tallow science and go, yes, this offers a distinct benefit. We're like, "Nah."
Yeah, and I think like as a skincare user, it's very hard for me to want to put beef tallow on my face. I think the general understanding is that it will probably act as an emollient with maybe possible occlusive properties, which already isn't great necessarily, but I just think the lack of understanding, the general variance in terms of processing and purity, they're just, it'll take a lot for me to want to try to put this on my face neat.
Well, I couldn't ask Victoria, who's our oily skin acne specialist in house. So I took one for the team and I put beef tallow on my face just to see what the fuss is all about. I should mention I didn't buy any of the popular like whipped tallow product because I just don't see a long term place in my skincare wardrobe for it. So I bought a food grade version that people use for like for DIY projects anyway, just to use straight up beef tallow. And what I did is I will fry an egg in the beef tallow, and the leftover spoon I will scrape some off. And I'm okay. Let's see what the fuss is about. One of the claims or the origin stories you'll hear of beef tallow is that it's actually been used for hundreds of years by our ancestors to treat blah 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 blah, blah different skin conditions. I get that actually. I can understand that because of its melting point and general skin feel. It's not as heavy, greasy, or as gross as probably what Victoria is fearing. Compared to, let's say, butter, it does go on skin relatively light, I will say. It has a beefy smell that in cooking it's not as yes, I am going deep on this.
Beefy.
It has a bit of a beefy odor. If you're into DIY skincare, which I actually don't think there's a big overlap of people who listen to us and people who DIY skincare, but if you are, that is one of those like points of discussion of which beef tallow source smells the least beefy. So for me, it's not terrible, but it definitely smells like I just walked out of a steakhouse a little bit. Has just yes. um, so in some ways, I kind of don't hate the texture. Again, it feels a little bit like me. If I disregard the smell, the texture does feel a little bit of dabbing like raw shea on your face. It's greasy, but not uncomfortably. So you could apply a pretty thin layer. So it's one of those things that's like for what it's claimed for, I can't get behind it. But if you're talking about DIY skincare trends, if you don't have sensitive, reactive, or acneic skin, and you just need like a pinch, if your skin just needs a little bit of hydration help, it's not one of those things I will actively hate on either. Victoria's like, no,
Mhm.
I don't like it. I don't like it. I'm trying to find positivities in this.
Yeah, I will say, I'm very surprised by the level of characterization that's been done on beef towel material. I think that
Mm-hmm.
part is quite surprising. The thing I just want to mention is like there are some beautiful like shea butter materials, like
Yeah, true.
really beautiful like oils and butters and waxes that have all been processed in specific ways to leave skin with finishes from like really creamy and rich to like really like velvety matte, like and it's also why like in a lot of makeup you'll see like shea butter. So my goal is just to basically advocate for maybe some of these like less glamorous materials or
Mm.
less trendy materials that often just feel like very run of the mill things that you come across. But I just want you to know, like, there's just so much more out there. We don't have to consider this, please, please.
You know what? That's a good point. Because when I was doing my homework, I was trying to think. I was like, okay, what is a plain, like if I am stuck somewhere, I have no access to refined actual skincare, and I can only get one like butter or melt or wax to put on my skin as a rescue balm or something, what would I use? Of all the textures I've touched for my dry skin, what I find to be a good balance, two things. Shea is decent. I do like cocoa butter. I find that to be a little
Mm,
bit nourishing, and that texture is actually pretty pleasant, neat too. Like
mm.
Victoria said, like if you want to go mango, cocoa, muru muru, the sky's the limit. There are a lot of options that I just don't think the proposed benefits of beef tallow kind of. We're just like there are options. You don't gotta go beef.
So with that, that wraps up this episode. We actually hope we do hope it was enjoyable and, it kind of tickles that curiosity you might have had about this material. To follow up, we are actually doing a true occlusives head to head where we are going to be looking at Vaseline, Aquaphor, our own Bon Voyage, Prequel, and CeraVe's healing ointment. The 5 that include petrolatum and true, we would consider occlusive balms. We will be discussing texture, ingredients, and our experiences using them. So we hope you will stick around for the next episode. Yeah, thanks,
See you
guys.
guys next time.
Bye.